What's up, guys? Welcome back to another Team Soul and Circus video. Today we're going over something completely new. We're going over a tier list. This is a tier list for the Dune format, as you guys saw by the title. But yeah, this is going to be a bunch of decks that I think are rogue as well as meta, that are going to be good in this format. Or I guess, some of them are going to be casual, but you guys wanted some rogue stuff, so I was going to put some of that stuff as well, making sure everyone gets what they need. And if I forget any decks, let me know in the comment section down below. And if you enjoyed this, don't forget to hit that thumbs up button as well as subscribe to the channel for more content like this. And let me know what else you guys want me to do. So before we dive in, we're going to be starting off with, I guess, Sprite. So there's lots of Sprite variants. There's Sprite Tri-Brigade, Sprite Pure, Sprite Melfi, Sprite Live Twin, Sprite Runic Live Twin. So I definitely think this deck is a tier 1. Some of them perform a little bit better than others. But Sprite itself as an engine with all the possibilities is definitely a tier 1 strategy. And then we have, I'm going to put this back to the bottom, we have Dragon Link here. Dragon Link is a very powerful deck, so I definitely think that in the right hands, like we saw it at some YCSs, we saw it at Nationals. So just, being a crazy deck, just all the gas. I believe that everything probably past tier 1 is probably going to get hit a little bit. So yeah, definitely Dragon Link being a tier 1 deck. Now we have Dinomorphia. This deck is definitely a meme deck, but I think it's probably a tier 2 or high rogue, so I'm going to put it in high rogue. This deck can 100% steal some wins. There's some very powerful lines, but it just gets blown out by some of the other cards, trap stuff. Like I'd probably play Labyrinth over it. But yeah. Now moving on to Earth Machines. This deck is definitely another one, I would say like high rogue or tier 2, maybe even tier 1.5. The deck is quite good. It's a hard deck to play. Like, why would you want to choose to play this deck when you could just play a better deck that is essentially the exact same thing? But definitely Earth Machine's a powerful deck. Regulus is still a powerhouse. Virtual World, we're going to go Rogue simply because of the fact that it can now, post Dune, can do the Calamities lock. So I'm going to give a little bit of respect here. Dark World's another tier 1.5 deck with Dark Corridor. It is very good. Yes, it is like a little bit rogue. I don't really know that I guess we could call it like tier 2, tier 1.5, whatever you guys want to play it as. But it's good, but the problem is Droll's going to be in the format, so I think it would maybe be down the tier 2 status. You're going to be seeing it a lot, but not going to be seeing it like topping a bunch of regionals. Then we have DDDs. This could be on the top end of rogue, so I'll put it like here. It's not like completely good enough that it should be better than Dinomorphia, let's say, because this deck can just like absolutely still win. Some people just don't have outs to it, but like this deck, it's another complicated deck, kind of like Earth Machine, just not good enough. I should probably put this down to tier 2, actually, to be honest. Now we're gonna go with like Trap Tricks. Trap Tricks is a deck that why would you try to play Trap Tricks over Labyrinth? It is a fan favorite deck, but I'm gonna put it back in high rogue, to be honest. With the new card like Banishment Trap Hole, it does get a little bit more powerful and has some good matchups against like this like sprites, as well as like it has a crazy matchup against Kashtira, but just not that good, to be honest. You just play Labyrinth over it, it's just way better. Now we're looking at PK. I'm gonna put PK in rogue, but the higher end of rogue. It's crazy to say that PK is probably worse than Trap Tricks, but the deck is just absolutely insane. It's another one of those combo decks that just can do so much in the right hand and in the hands of the right person. Not much to say. I'm sorry, Alex. Crystal Beasts, I guess rogue. It is a deck. I guess like it can do stuff. It can win games. It's just not that great. And I guess it like we saw it top a few regionals, so I guess I'm gonna give some respect, putting it in the rogue strategy. Draco Slayers, Drolls in the format, casual. Sorry, Orlando. Ray's Bay, tier 2. I think that like this deck still can perform, just not very good, especially with Dragon Link in the format. You're going to be seeing it like get smashed around so much. I would not take this deck to a high tournament. Yes, we saw Engage to 2, but that does not power up the deck. And I hope that this deck doesn't actually get any more support, to be honest. Altergeist. It's either between tier 2 or rogue. I'm going to put it in high rogue, to be honest. I don't think the deck's going to be performing that well. It's just a worse Labyrinth. Yes, Multifaker, Imperm goes burr. But at the same time, you don't want to lose to more stuff. This is a hand trap format. You still lose to Ash. You still lose to Droll. You still lose to Evenly Matched. We're going to be seeing everywhere here. I want to take a second to talk about Unchained. Unchained here is an interesting deck because I think that it's definitely a higher deck than people do realize. Um, and I want to put it in the tier 1 status here. This deck in the right hands is kind of crazy, but it has the same issue where like it does fall short to like Nibiru and stuff like that. So in the right hands, it's a very good deck. I really like it, so I'm gonna put it in tier 1.5. And yeah, let me know in the comment section if you disagree with that. But I definitely think it's good. I can see it between like being tier 1.5 and 2. Blue Eyes, casual. It's always gonna be casual. This ain't 2017. Lady Labyrinth, well, I'd probably put this above Sprite, to be honest. Like, this is one of the best decks of the format. It is the deck to beat. Labyrinth is absolutely insane. Because I keep getting more insane, you know, being able to just hit the, like, Eradicator, turn 0 is just absolutely disgusting. Even if it's not your turn. And just being able to set up all those cards is just insane. Generally seeing this at a lot of tournaments, which is what tier 1 really is. I'm going to put Galaxy Eyes and casual. I know a lot of players are playing it, and yes, it can OTK and Steel Games. Just unfortunately doesn't have the consistency enough to do that. Shout out to JC for Galaxy. Eldritch, casual. Play Labyrinth over this. If you like Golden Lord, then you're doing something wrong. Generators, I'm going to put it in Rogue once again. Looks like Alex's decks are all in Rogue. Kind of interesting for both that. But Generator is a interesting deck. It does do some crazy stuff, but unfortunately, it just doesn't have like the grind game. And if you do stop it, it just has like a lot of good choke points if you know what it is. As well as like in a high tournament, you're not going to see that many players that want to play it because it doesn't have the consistency that other decks require. So we did see a little bit with the new synchro stuff, which I'm going to be talking about when I put the Junk Speeder. Same thing with Invoked. Invoked is a... There's lots of different variants. You could play Invoke Shaddoll Dogmatica. That's like a casual deck. You could play the Invoked package with like Duality and the Revolution Synchron. And I could say that like that is a rogue or a high rogue. But definitely not the greatest deck right now. Dark Magician, always going to be rogue. Shout out to the Dark Magician players that love this deck. Pendulum, same thing, rogue. People love this. Shout out the Triff, I guess, but not the greatest deck. Plunder, I'd probably put it like high rogue. I think it's probably better than Altergeist. This deck like comes back. It's another fan favorite deck. People love playing it, and it's able to do like some crazy stuff depending on the format. And we do see a lot of darks in this format. Dark, lights, and darks. If you look at most of the decks here, we're going to be seeing some light and darks. And they have an earth ship now, so they can do stuff against like earth machines. Hopefully they get a wind ship soon so they can just play against any matchup. But yeah. Flandries, we're going to put it in rogue. I guess I'd put it in high rogue. We do see it at a lot of tournaments. It does have, like, this deck you're going to be facing that you have to know. It's just, why would you choose to play this deck over any other deck in the format, really? Like, I love M-Pen, and I'm not even playing that. Chimera. So this is another one of those sleeper decks. I'm going to put it in 1.5 due to the fact that, like, this deck is actually completely unexplored. So we have seen, like, Tri-Brigade versions of Chimeras when I'm playing. Testing it a little bit. We have seen the version of Pure with, like, Fenrir's and, like, other crazy good cards with Edge Imps. And then we also seeing some, like, Albaz-related ones as well with Branded and stuff like that. And it definitely is going to be a deck that you have to pay attention to, and it can just sweep you off your feet. And then we're going to be talking about the junk deck, or I guess Synchron. Synchron is definitely a 1.5 or a tier 1 deck. I'm going to put it up in tier 1.5 for now. I want to put it in high tier 1.5. This deck is kind of like unexplored once again. You know, the format has just started. It is like we're not having that many regionals. So once regionals do start up again, I could see the potential of this being tier 1. The problem is once it becomes tier 1, then we're going to be seeing cards like Nibiru and those going second word breakers just able to absolutely smoke the deck. Yes, we always saw like Junk Speeder being like, oh, just ash this card, but now a lot of times they just chain block it. So it's really hard to end up destroying that as well, or negating, I should say, as well as there just being so many cards you can do. And Revolution Synchron is kind of crazy, to be honest. Infernoble, I'm going to put this in tier 2, to be honest. It's just another one of those break my board kind of decks, and it looks like really weak other than like Charlemagne being able to set up in the gates. It doesn't have Smoke Bandit anymore, so Definitely not the deck that it used to be. Now we're talking about Gold Pride. Gold Pride itself as a deck is probably rogue or even casual, but like Gold Pride Punk, definitely a high rogue or a rogue deck. People do love this deck. I really love this deck. It came with the accessories for it, so hopefully we get some more support for the deck. This is a very cool deck overall, being able to summon out some stuff, but it does have like that mid-range issue where if it doesn't get off, or if it doesn't start its engines, it doesn't get off very quickly. BA. Yeah. If anyone has anything to say about this, I don't know. It's not the deck to play. Branded, definitely a tier 1 deck. Branded Ash Branded Fusion pass. No, the deck is actually really powerful. We see it represented at a lot of the higher tier events, and in the hands of a good player, it can definitely do a lot. I think that Branded is probably one of the most like versatile decks if we get more fusions, but the problem is it is becoming like a Highlander deck. It's topped a lot of regionals. It's definitely been in the format for a long time, and hopefully we don't see it get hit. That'd be quite devastating, but I definitely think that this deck here is one of the best decks of the format, obviously, with these three being the trifecta, as well as our good old friend Kashtira, which we're going to talk about right now. So Kashtira is once again one of the top decks. These 5 decks are going to be the decks you're going to be seeing pretty much everywhere when you go to an event. If you're not seeing one of these, you're probably not playing at a high tier event, or you're just at like a really weird area, or people are just playing like all of the decks. Like for example, sometimes at local we see like all Kashtira, so we just don't see any Sprite players. Other times the Sprite players are playing like Labyrinth. But a lot of times like you're not going to be seeing bunch of these decks. You might see them at the lower tables, but if you're going to like a regionals or a higher tier event, you're going to be absolutely seeing these 5 decks here, as well as like anything like tier 1.5 and 1. If you walk around those high tier tables, you're definitely going to be seeing these decks. Kashtira, insane. Please Konami, hit this deck again. Unicorn busted, Fenrir busted, Arise Heart absolutely disgusting. We can't have Trident in the game, but you can have a Macrocosmos Trident. That's fine. Okay. Exo Sisters, definitely a rogue deck. Not much to say. Martha kind of good, but I guess, it's heavily carried by Shifter. Purely, well, I guess I should say these 6 decks. Purely is a uprising, brand new deck from Amazing Defenders, as well as getting powered up by every set that seems to be dropping, I guess. Sleepy is an insane card. Lily is an even better card. And then the new E Purely Noir, or I guess, yeah, whatever the E Purely Little Baby Noir, is an absolutely busted card. Being able to search for your Pure Leap is crazy. And, Noir being just a tower monster that can shuffle back your cards from your graveyard or your field is very, very good as well. Definitely watch out for this deck, but, it is relying on the RNG, and we're probably going to be seeing like Sleepy get hit to 1 as well, which is going to be kind of rough for the deck. Fluffles, definitely a casual. Shout out to Giant Skyhawk, as well as my boy Fluffle Penguin. I love this deck to my core. This is why it's always going to be there. Kalen does play it at locals and always makes me happy when he's able to do cool stuff with it. It is a cool deck. Unfortunately, it is just a casual deck. Now we see Vanquish Souls. This deck is 100% a tier 1.5 deck. Probably one of the higher ones, if you have to ask me. I don't know if we've actually gotten released the new Vanquish Soul stuff, but I guess we haven't gotten spoilers for it. But this deck can do a lot. Rising and then jumping into Borger, going into the Caesar, and Rock just being an all-insane card. Link ones are pretty busted. But yeah, definitely a deck that you guys will be seeing at regional levels, as well as at higher events than that. So just be careful for the deck. Definitely read up on it, and those imperm targets are kind of crazy. Next up, we have Manadium, or as my good friend Thomas calls it, Mid-Dome. This deck definitely, either it can be 1.5 or 1, but it is, once again, another deck you're going to be seeing. It is like essentially just the Junk Speeder deck, but a little bit better. It's like the heavy combo deck of the format. I would guess you could put it in 1. I'd put it in 1 as well, I guess. It's a little bit better than Sprite, I think. Just less consistent. But it's like that big heavy combo deck, but it loses to Dark Ruler No More and Nib in a lot of cases as well. Now we're going for Marincess. Marincess is probably another tier 2 deck. I'd probably put it above Sky Striker. And that's just like bottom of tier 2, to be honest. Marincess is able to set up a bunch of stuff like as every single Cybers deck does. Set up to a little kind of towers-ish monster, and then it's able to interrupt you with stuff like Wave. It's 100% a good deck in the hands of a good player. So I definitely think the people should be watching out for this, and you will see this deck probably top a few regionals, as well as take a few games off of you as well if you don't know what you're doing. Mathmech, Firewall, same position. We're going to put it in with the other Cybers decks. Just because Circular's at 1 doesn't mean this deck isn't very good. The Firewall deck is very nice, but with the features of like Nib being back in the format as well as Droll, it hurts the deck a lot. Sonic Codec really hurts, but it still has the access code update jammer OTK, so you have to be careful for that as well. Punk is definitely a high rogue deck with the pairings of the Gold Pride. Punk is a very, very good engine as well as deck. Being able to go into Psychic and Punisher can be very hard to out. So I'd probably put that a little bit higher up, if anything. Now we're going for Makonko. Makonko has actually topped a few events as well. So I would say I'd probably put this at tier 1.5. I know we see this a lot on the channel with Todd. Shout out to Todd. But this deck is another really weird deck that has different alternative win cons. And you just come out of nowhere and just take the game if you don't know what their opponent does. So it's important that you do read up on these cards. And really tier 1 and 1.5 are decks you're going to be seeing at events a lot. Rescue Ace, once again, tier 1.5. It is an unexplored deck that hasn't gotten really its chance to shine yet. And hopefully it's not going to get the Super Heavy Samurai treatment and get banned immediately. But Turbulence is an insane card. Being able to set 4 from the deck is just absolutely busted. So definitely watch out and read up on the cards. The 2 new cards from the Duelist Nexus is absolutely insane for the deck. Rika, 1.5 once again. This deck is insane. Con is a hell of a card. Being able to just tribute your monsters for cost and then get their own effects is just disgusting, to be honest. I don't know really why. Please Konami, ban Con or something. As well as Sun Avalon combos, just absolutely crazy. Heroes, I have to put it in tier 2. It feels bad to say it, but Heroes will be a deck you'll see forever. When it goes off, and it can still 100% steal some games. We'll see it some tops and regionals as well. Just a very good deck overall. Any Runic variants, I'd say Runic is probably tier 1. Runic for hire, Sprite Runic. It's in the same spot as Sprite, to be honest. Being able to get all that resources, and even though they hit Runic Fountain the 2, I don't really know why they hit that. It doesn't do anything for the decks. It's a crazy engine, to be honest. Salmon Greats, we're going to be counting this with the new support. And I'm going to say it is a rogue deck. This deck doesn't do very much. It still dies to every hand trap that is there. It's still it's a worse hero, essentially. If you're playing this deck, you might as well be playing Marincess or even Cybers, just Firewall. Scareclaw is going to be another tier 2 deck. This deck can 100% steal some wins, so I'm going to put it above Earth Machines and the Marincess deck. Unfortunately, it just has a hard time outing some of the boards. It does have a good matchup against Kashtira. It has a good matchup against Labyrinth. It has a good matchup against Purely, and then it has an insane matchup against Branded. But it does lose Dragon Link and any kind of Link related deck. So it's kind of unfortunate that it is the way it is. But it's just able to set up a huge floodgate essentially and have just not affected by stuff. So a nice little tower monster. Mogi, another 1.5 deck. This could be debatably a 1, but the problem is it does lose to a lot of blowout cards. That's why we're putting it in tier 1.5. You're going to be seeing a lot of regionals as well as higher events and locals. This deck is filled in near locals. It kind of reminds me of the hero of the 2020 or 2019 format. Tier, this is just a lot of copium, but I guess you could put it in tier 1.5. You're going to be seeing it all over the place, so definitely pay attention to this. A lot of the decks, a lot of the tier 1 decks, absolutely just shit on tier, so I don't really know why you want to play it, I guess, if you're huffing that copium. Tri-Brigade, it's a rogue strategy, unfortunately. I love Tri-Brigades, but unfortunately just not that good this format, and It is good with Tri-Sprite, and I guess you could play it with Chimera. It's just not that good by itself, and unfortunately, like, Rescue Cat is kind of weaker now due to the fact that we don't have Gamma. UTC, High Rogue. Actually, I'd put this, it's either like High Rogue or Tier 2. The fine line between these two is very, very thin. So like all these decks could be in Tier 2 status. I just wanted to separate them so you can see a little bit more power. And now that I think about it, this should definitely be down here. No respect for Ray. This deck can still take up a bunch of slots in your main deck, and letting it go in second just can absolutely chew your board apart, like it was in the past. Now for our final deck, we're going over Adignister. Adignister is unfortunately going to be a top of casual rogue deck for me. You're able to set up a huge amount of like floodgates in like Cyber's Arrival, as well as like a bunch of your cards in the graveyard. You know, even the Doyon, not Doyon, the little red guy, Dip is a pretty good floodgate and being able to stop the stuff. And yes, it doesn't like activate on the field, but you're gonna be able to have like a Rivalry as well, and just sitting on a huge boss monster that opponents cannot struggle to out, popping cards and getting like tokens onto the field. Is able to go for so many free wins like that. If you don't have Kaiju, you're going to be losing a lot this format, so definitely pay attention to that. We see no Tier 0. Kashtira could definitely like be a bit probably Tier 0. I think probably these three decks are the best decks of the format, with Branded tearing a little bit far behind. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the video. If I forgot any of your decks, let me know in the comment section down below, and we'll feature it next time, as well as I will answer every single comment that is a deck, and tell you where I would put it on this list. And if you disagree, let me know why in the comment section down below. Don't forget to like that video, as well as subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to stay safe. Peace.